to show you how to replace the switch on these TC Electronic soft touch pedals. This is a pedal I have from my friend Dave. You can see the B and C and the tap tempo all work as expected, but this one's not working, and so we're going to fix that. So the first thing you need to do obviously is open up the back, and I'm using this Torx Starbit driver. I'm not sure what number it is. I think it might be a T5 or T6. And you have to take out these screws here. I've already done that, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going around the outside. You can't see them in the frame here, but I'm sure you'll be able to find them. And then there's this 7th one here, which I've loosened, but it's being held in by his Velcro, so I'm just going to leave it right there. You can see I've put these screws and the screws that we'll find inside into a tray. This is the number one smart thing to do, because if you're like me, it will roll off and you'll lose the screws, and then you'll be... Once you get the bottom panel off, you can take these 4 Starbit screws out. They're the same size bit, but they're a little shorter shaft. And once those screws are out, you can remove this whole board right here. It's being held in place by some wires. Well, in the interest of not screwing things up, I'm not going to try to take that out, but I bet I could, and if it was my pedal I probably would, but I don't need to do it to fix this, so I'm going to leave it right where it is. You can see the buttons here. These are all working, and I've already removed the bad button from right here. And I'll show you how to test these. All you need is a multimeter set to continuity so that it beeps when there's continuity. And you can see that these each of these buttons has 4 pins, and you should have continuity across them like this at all times, but only continuity in the other dimension when you press the button. I'm pressing it underneath there, and we're getting that continuity, so that tells me that these are double pole, normally open momentary switches, and they are proprietary as far as I can tell. There's only one place I was able to find them, and I'll put a link to that in the video description. But you can see there's these little blue buttons. This is what they look like up close, except that this one has had the legs clipped off, because what I found was that that was really the only way to get this button out of the daughter board here, because TC, being in the European Union, uses this garbage lead-free solder, I have to imagine, and it is just miserable to work with. So I ended up using my trusty little angled cutters and just kind of sticking them underneath the button and prying it up a little bit and clipping them over here, obviously. But we're going to solder the new one back in that spot right there, and I suspect we'll be good to go then. So I'm going to try to clean out these solder pads here from where I clipped the leads. If you've done any DIY work, you've almost undoubtedly done something like this, but the basic idea is I'm going to apply some good, nice, deadly lead solder here, and see if I can get it to pull out the junk with this solder pump. And sometimes a little tap on it does the trick, and sometimes taking something and just sort of poking it through there does the trick. Okay, so I think I actually have the good way to do this here. Step 1 is going to be to put a component lead. In this case it's a diode leg. I always save those because they're thick and they're handy. Putting it into some pliers to make a little heat sink. I'm applying solder to the hole there where there's still a piece of that leg from the button sticking in, and the idea is that you can get the component lead to go in there, and it kind of, you can see it's pushed out the piece of the leg, which is down at the bottom there now. So I'm just gonna take that off with the tip of the iron and clean the tip, and then sort of carefully either pull the lead out or push it the rest of the way through, I suppose would also work, but I'm going to pull it out. And you just have to be careful not to pull up the solder pad doing this. I tend to be impatient and want things to be over with and then rush it and then screw it up, but since I'm on camera I'm going to do this a little more carefully. Now there's still some solder in there, but with the leg pulled out now, it's a lot easier to clean out the eyelet with the solder pump. This should do the trick. Yeah, I'll get that right after a couple of tries, and then they'll all be nice and clean. I can put the new button in. Okay, so you can see I've cleaned out these 4 eyelets here, and we're ready to put in the new button. This is what the button looks like. Looks just like these, the other ones that you see in the other spots there. And it has four legs on it. And it's hard to do with only 2 hands, but if we tested for continuity, we'd get it across each of these points, but we'd only get continuity here when the button is pressed. And it's just a little kind of springy button. So then the trick is, finding the right placement for the button legs to go into the PCB, and they're bendable, and it's just kind of like putting an IC into a socket, really. You know how you sometimes have to bend them a little bit to make them fit. I'll show you how I'm going to approach this. You see they have these curves in them, which is designed to hold them in there, but I'm going to operate on the assumption that the solder is going to hold it in there just fine. So I'm going to straighten those out with my pliers here and get rid of that little curve in each of those, because that kind of thing is a pain when you're trying to get it to sit down in there. So if we get rid of those 4 bends, or mostly get rid of them at least, I bet we'll have an easier time getting the button to seat in there. So then we'll just kind of push them in to compensate for how they're flared out a little bit more. And I bet you we'll be able to drop that right in there. Shouldn't matter which way it's oriented, but I am making the dot in the button match the other buttons, just because, why wouldn't you? Okay, so you can see I've got the button starting to go in there, and there are 4 solder points on this button, and then 2 little plastic legs that need to be pushed through, and it all kind of goes through, but again, I've got some solder gunk jammed in there, and because I'm not a very patient person, I'm more inclined to just make it go through by getting it mostly in place and then adding the solder and letting it sort of ease its way in from there. Somebody somewhere is screaming out that I'm a terrible person, but I can't help it. But the way these work is that there's a spring here from the other side of the foot switch, and it actually just literally actuates the button physically. which then does whatever it's doing with relay switching, probably to make it do what it does in the circuit. So I don't really love the fact that that's sitting up like that, because just going to result in a little bit of extra pressure on the legs of the thing. So I will fix that, but I don't know how long it's going to take me, so I'm not going to do it on camera. Alright, I got them in. Turns out cleaning your tip of your iron makes a big difference in how these things work. Sometimes, like I said, I get impatient and lazy, but here we go, soldering those last two legs in. These two are fine and good to go. And now, I could do a continuity check, but what the heck, I've got the power right here to check it this way. And there it is. You can see this is the A side, and it's working just fine now. So I'm going to clean this up, put it back together, and I think my friend Dave will be in business. Thanks for watching and listening to my rambling. I hope this is in some way helpful.